my great pleasure now to introduce our speaker for today, Sharon Solomon. For anyone here that's not that familiar with Sharon, she is the wife of our founder, Paul Solomon. She's a minister of the Fellowship of the Inner Light. She serves as recording secretary on our board of directors, and she facilitates our pastoral council meetings. And prior to the COVID times, for quite some time, she did wonderful work with the children who came on Sundays. Sharon has done just about any job you can think of, official and unofficial, at the fellowship in the many years she's been with the Fellowship of the Inner Light. It was my privilege to first meet her when I was about 26 years old. I'm 73 now. So she and I have known each other for a few years. And we have done so many things together, and we're like sisters. She's one of my dearest and closest friends. She's a good friend, mentor, and teacher to many, many people. She does a lot of things behind the scenes, things you couldn't even imagine. She's a very loving person. We're privileged to have her in our soul family. And we all open our hearts right now, Miss Sharon, to hear your wonderful message. It will be very interesting about this lovely rabbi that I've been hearing about. Come on up, Sharon. Let's give her a welcome.
Thank you, Susan, for that music. It makes me not want to speak. I just want to sit and listen to you sing and play. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much. The Hebrew mystics say that when God created the world, he knew that Adam and Eve would eat of the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden, and thus separate themselves from the oneness of God. So God set aside some souls at the end of the universe who would not experience the fall, the separation, the duality of the bicameral brain. They would not experience separation of good and bad, right and wrong, good and evil. They would know only good, the oneness of God, with God. These souls included the souls of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the soul of Noah, and the souls of some of the great prophets and scribes. These were called the innocent souls. Such was the soul of Rabbi Israel, who became known as the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the wondrous name. 17th century Poland was a time of great upheaval for the Jews. It is said that 200,000 men, women, and children were slaughtered in the pogroms, where the military fired into the crowds of Jews that lived there. During such upheavals in the history of the world, myths and legends are born to give hope to a desperate people. And so grew the stories of the man who became known as the Baal Shem Tov. Like many tales of the masters, the stories were told first as oral history. And so there were many versions of the tales of the Baal Shem Tov. There is even doubt by some, like the tales of King Arthur, if the man himself ever lived. But also, like the myths of the many religions and cultures of the world, the stories themselves carry the teachings of the masters who experienced them. The storytellers say that during this time, the 17th century, the Jewish people awaited the coming of an innocent soul to save the people. But God said, not yet. At that time, in the Carpathian Mountains of Poland, there lived Rabbi Eliezer and his wife, a pious couple who lived simply in the Jewish community. The Tartars came, attacked and killed many Jews. Rabbi Eliezer was taken prisoner and carried to a faraway land. Rabbi Eliezer, though in exile, did not lose faith in God, but continued his study of Torah, the law, and the prophets. He had memorized the Psalms and spent his days repeating them as prayers. Though a slave, his assigned duty to his master was only to watch the feet of the vizier when he returned each day from his audience with the king. There came a time when the king attacked an enemy city, but their armies held out against him. The king didn't know what to do. He asked his vizier, who also didn't know what to do. When Rabbi Eliezer watched the vizier's feet, the vizier talked about his plight, and Rabbi Eliezer said, "Maybe God will show me an answer." That night, the rabbi had a dream. The dream showed him a stone near the city walls, and as the stone rolled away, he saw a tunnel. Rabbi Eliezer believed his dream was communication from God and told the vizier, who in turn told the king. Of course, they were doubtful that this was a solution, but Rabbi Eliezer suggested that they take him in a boat to the location he had seen in the dream, and there, as predicted, they saw a stone. They rolled it away, and there they found a tunnel. The king led his troops through the tunnel and was victorious, and thus offered Eliezer a reward. The rabbi had a new status in the kingdom. It led to his eventual release and freedom to return home to his wife. Legend says that at that moment, God looked down again and saw the pious couple, and so decided, in the year 1698, or the year 5458 of the Hebrew calendar, to send the innocent soul to them. The wife of Rabbi Eliezer gave birth to a son, and they named the child Israel. The mother soon died, and after another 5 years, Rabbi Eliezer too died. The orphan child, Israel, was raised by the pious Jews of the village. It was this child who became known as Rabbi Israel, son of Eliezer, the Baal Shem Tov. Rabbi Eliezer was first taken to a far country, symbolic in the midst of the separation of the soul from the body of God. The story of Rabbi Eliezer has similarities to the story of Joseph, who was sold into slavery. Joseph interpreted the dream of the king of Egypt and attained a high position in the royal court. Or to the story of Daniel, who was taken into exile during the Babylonian captivity and became the advisor to King Nebuchadnezzar through the interpretation of a dream. Rabbi Eliezer, like Joseph and Daniel, maintained his piousness and faith in the Almighty through adverse circumstances, though waited many years to understand the purpose for their sufferings. We do not always know God's purpose, but we can be assured, when studying these extraordinary lives, that there is a purpose to our lives, though we may not understand the reason for our own challenges. God knows. And our challenge is to maintain our faith that God will not allow anything to happen to us that's not in accordance with divine will. God can use even our mistakes for our greater good. And if we do not see God's will and our will are the same, then it is only because God has vision farther into the future than we do ourselves. The birth of the child, Rabbi Israel, also can be seen to have similarities to the story of Abraham and Sarah in their old age, giving birth to the child Isaac. As with the story of Abraham, the succeeding generations will become a great nation with many millions of people worshiping God through the centuries. For his Abraham, then Isaac and Jacob were the founding fathers of Judaism and Christianity, so was Rabbi Eliezer's son, Rabbi Israel, the founding father of Hasidic Jewry, which has hundreds of thousands of followers still around the world. And so continues the life of Rabbi Israel, written down many years after the stories were told over and over again in oral history through the generations. Before his death, Rabbi Eliezer told his son that he was one of the innocent souls sent to earth for a special purpose. He said, "Fear no one but God. Love every person with all your heart and soul, no matter who he is. The enemy, Satan, will always try to divert you, to draw you to him. But keep remembering that your soul is secure in you, for it is entire, it is a part of God. Though not one of the innocent souls, we too can heed this instruction of Rabbi Eliezer to his son. Our souls too are part of the body of God, and nothing can change that." The Jews of the town cared for the child and sent him to the Hebrew schools of the day, but there was a problem. Israel could not bear to be behind closed doors, and so as soon as he was able, each day, he escaped into the woods. There he would commune with the trees, the flowers, and the animals living there. He would jump, run, dance, and sing with joy and ecstasy at the beauty and sacredness of God's creation. When the schoolmasters found the boy, they would bring him back into the classroom. But Israel would escape into the forest every chance he got. Ultimately, the schoolmasters lost patience with him and let him do just what he wanted to choose because they weren't able to control him. Israel left that school and found a cave and lived on nuts and berries in the forest. At the age of 10, he became an assistant to the schoolmaster in another village. His job was to wake up the children, escort them to school, and lead them home after class ended for the day. Soon, the people of the village noticed a change in the children. They sang and seemed always to be filled with joy. This happened because the child Israel led the children first into the forest and led them in song. Their song was always the same. They sang, "Praise be his holy name, amen." It was the only song that Israel knew. But one day, Satan saw the children and became jealous. He went before God and told him that there was someone interfering with his work, and God gave Satan permission to intervene. Satan entered the heart of a creature of the forest who appeared one day and frightened the children. The children ran home crying, and after that they no longer sang. Israel went into the forest alone. He knew he was safe. When he returned to the town, he found that the children were still frightened, and their parents forbid them to spend time with Israel. There were many tales of the experiences with the evil one in the forests, of beasts and werewolves and black hearts. Fear overcomes joy. We see mythical evil creatures in the unknown. We leave behind childhood trust, and for many, that joy and trust never returns. Yet love is more powerful than fear, and so the boy Israel strives on into the unknown, confident that he is protected by his joyful relationship with God. After the pogroms in Poland, many families were left poverty-stricken and were unable to find jobs. Many children were forced to abandon their study of Torah, the law, and the prophets to help their families survive. Only the wealthy, few and far between, were able to educate their children in religious study, the most valued commodity for the Jews of that time. This resulted in a generation of ignorant people who, though following the Jewish laws to the best of their ability, were scorned by the wealthy elite. There was a rift between the learned and the unlearned people, and the two groups even prayed in different synagogues. The time was right for a teacher to come who valued the non-material values of life, who knew that wisdom doesn't come from reading books, and who knew that joy and gratitude are valued forms of worship. When the children stopped singing, Israel returned to the town where he was born and became a servant in the synagogue. He listened to the teachings of Torah, but that was not enough. He was curious. He wanted more answers. So he studied Talmud and the Mishnah, the teachings of the rabbis and the oral law. Still, he wasn't satisfied. So he began to seek answers in Kaballah, the teachings of the Hebrew mystics. But his time had not yet come, and during the day, after his chores were completed, he slept on a bench in the storeroom of the temple. At night, when all was quiet and no one was around, he opened the sacred books and studied. The storytellers say that a light shone around him, his own inner light, illuminating the scrolls he absorbed night after night. After studying the teachings of the mystical Kaballah, he still wanted to know more. Now at this time, in another city in Poland, the tzaddik, that's a wise and learned man, Rabbi Adam, called master of all mysteries, was growing old. Though not one of the innocent souls, because of his devotion to God and the purity of his life, he was in possession of the book that contained the secret name of God. Only 6 human beings possessed the book before him. They were Adam, Abraham, Joseph, Joshua son of Nun, and Solomon. The 7th was Rabbi Adam. This is how he received the book. After Rabbi Adam studied all Torah and all Kaballah, he said, "Man does not know," and he begged the knowledge of the angels. One night, he was aroused from sleep and taken into the wilderness, to a cave at the side of a mountain. He went deep into the cave, which was on the other side of the world, that led to Machpelah, the place where Abraham lies buried. And there he found the book of the sacred name of the mysteries. He studied every day from the book, and as he aged, he asked, "To whom shall I leave the book?" Soon his wife gave birth to a son. As the son grew, he too sought to learn. He studied Torah and Kaballah. But after he studied the writing and understandings of the mystics, he did not seek more. Rabbi Adam realized he could not pass the book to his son, and on his deathbed, he directed his son to find Rabbi Israel, who would be the next custodian of the book of the wondrous name. "Was I not worthy?" asked Rabbi Adam's son. "You are not the soul predestined to receive the book," Rabbi Adam replied. Rabbi Adam's son traveled to a town in Poland where he was told Rabbi Israel, son of Eliezer, lived. He asked around, but no one knew who he was. None of the learned men of the town answered to the given name and description given by Rabbi Adam. the son of Rabbi Adam noticed a young man who seemed always to be around the temple. He was known as the temple fool, for he often slept in a back room during the day. One night, Rabbi Adam's son, never identified by his own name, waited in the temple and watched the boy. He hid in a small room and came out at night and saw the light shining around him. "Are you Rabbi Israel?" he asked. The boy said, "I am Israel, son of Eliezer." The son of Rabbi Adam knew he found the man who was to receive the book containing the sacred name. The two of them left the city and began wandering in the hills and forests. The son of Rabbi Adam became the servant of Rabbi Israel. The two men went into the city, found a house, and the two studied the sacred book together day and night for many years. Here stories differ, as they often do in oral histories. This is the version I prefer. It is a rare individual who, though he wants something for himself, would take on a difficult assignment of conveying that gift to another person. The fact that the son of Rabbi Adam carried the book to another is an amazingly sacrificial and laudable act. Then the son of Rabbi Adam takes a step further of becoming the servant of Rabbi Israel. He recognizes the teacher with the goal to learn, to grow, to think with the mind of the master. He is willing to serve Rabbi Israel in order to learn from him. This part of the story is consistent in the telling. Here's where it differs from story to story. I like to think that the son of Rabbi Adam continued to serve Rabbi Israel throughout his own life, as told in some versions. Then the son of Rabbi Israel returned in a future life to become a great rabbi himself, one of the laudable teachers of Hasidism. Some of the tales say that after years of serving the master, the son of Rabbi Adam became impatient and jealous of Rabbi Israel and wanted to teach it for himself. Others say 2 other disciples joined Rabbi Israel and the son of Rabbi Adam, and this is what happened to them. The wondrous sacred name of God must be said with every part of mind, body, and spirit being in total accord. When this is so, miracles happen, extraordinary occurrences. If there is any part of self not in harmony with the holy name of God, the saying of the name causes a literal explosion of the body, burning it to death. And this is what happened to the disciples of Rabbi Israel, impatient to be of a stage of growth to say the holy name and perform miracles. This is the same thing that happened to the sons of Aaron in the Bible, who entered the Holy of Holies and attempted to say the holy name before their time and were blown up. This is what happens when a person tries to rush the energy of the Kundalini and blows the body apart. Rabbi Israel was given the sacred name of God and was aligned with it. He was one with it, and thus became known as the master of the wondrous names, and with this name did miracles. Rabbi Israel, after studying the book for many years, it still was not his time to be known. After the death of the son of Rabbi Adam, Rabbi Israel went into the forest and lived in a cottage. He knew himself to be the master of all knowledge and chose to stay apart, living alone with the plants and the animals. Soon, after many years, Rabbi Israel came again into the city and became a schoolmaster. He lived quietly by himself, but it is said that the wife of the rabbi there looked into his face and saw wisdom in his eyes. He lived in a small attic room in the rabbi's home. In their attic, there was often heard strange noises, and when that happened, the house would shake. They thought evil spirits lived in that attic. One day, the rabbi's wife became aware of turmoil in the attic, and she heard the voice of Rabbi Israel saying, "Be still." And that was the last time the disruptions happened. There came a time when the rabbi, where Rabbi Israel lived, and another rabbi were asked to settle a dispute, as was the custom of that day. It was a difficult case, and the two rabbis debated for hours without coming to a decision. A man in one city had purchased a horse to be delivered to a city many miles away. When the horse arrived, it was lame. The two parties disputed who would bear the cost. Rabbi Israel asked, "Did the horse carry a load?" "Yes, the horse pulled a wagon with logs," was the response. Rabbi Israel said that the logs belonged to the lameness, and so the man who paid for the horse should be given the logs. The rabbi from the far city was impressed. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am the schoolmaster," said Rabbi Israel. That rabbi saw the wisdom of Rabbi Israel and said, "You are the intended husband for my daughter. I will give her to you in marriage." Rabbi Israel agreed, and he asked that the marriage contract not say that he was a rabbi, but say only Israel, son of Eliezer. On the way home, the rabbi died, and his son found the marriage contract among the papers of his dead father. The son was not pleased. "Who is this Israel, son of Eliezer?" he asked. But his sister said he would wait until the man arrived to claim her. Rabbi Israel and the woman ultimately were married, and they left Carpathian Hills of Poland, where he worked as a lime burner for many years and had many adventures unknown to any but those who were a part of them. At the age of 36, Rabbi Israel was told by God, "The time has come for you to reveal yourself." Then the master of the holy name began to perform works of wonder. There are hundreds of tales of the adventures and miracles of Rabbi Israel as he traveled through the hills of Eastern Europe. The tales have been seen as some of the Hebrew equivalent of the tales of the Arabian Nights or the legends of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Yet Rabbi Israel did not violate tradition, he enlarged it. He was observant of every aspect of the law. He was called the Baal Shem Tov, the master of the holy name, because his miracles were performed by saying the holy name of God. They included healings, apparitions, visits with angels, spirit guides and devils, purifications, communications with the dead, and even the raising of the dead, bringing souls back to life. He traveled from one end of the earth to the other in a single night. He calmed wild beasts and silenced restless demons. His miracles parallel those of the prophets of old, the Eastern masters, and of Jesus Christ himself. The Baal Shem Tov stood in the marketplace and told stories and focused on the faith and holiness of the common people, renewing a dynamism to the practice of worship that included not only the wealthy and the scholars, but the poor and unlearned people. He talked in parables. He amassed hundreds of followers, despite the opposition of many of the Orthodox rabbis who accused him of ignorance, wizardry, sorcery, and Sabbath violation. For through the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, the secrets of the heavens were no longer restricted to scholars, but available to everyone. As did Jesus, he opened availability of communication with God to all men and women. The origin and teachings of the Hasidic sect of Judaism began with the Baal Shem Tov. There are stories of friendships, generosity, kindness, finding God in the smallest things in life, of weddings and celebrations of life. All the tales tell of spiritual growth and development, progress of the soul in its search for meaning, and for understanding of God's divine intermingling with the souls of the earth. Toward the end of his life, Rabbi Israel found he was losing his energy and vitality for all of his healings and help that he gave to others. He had gifted others with his own divine sparks. As the story goes, he went in search of those sparks from those he had blessed, but he found that in return, the return of the sparks would remove the strength and healing from those he had helped. So the Baal Shem Tov let the sparks remain with those to whom they had been given, and so he died. After the death of the Baal Shem Tov, his teachings grew, and the study of Hasidism spread through the world. There are many great teachers through the centuries. The most well-known, perhaps, was his great-grandson, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. After several generations, the Hasidim numbered half of Jewry in Eastern Europe. They were governed by their tzaddikim, or exalted saints, to whom they came for decisions on every possible challenge and dilemma, and to celebrate their rituals, holidays, and festivities. But soon, too, the movement declined, for many tzaddikim took advantage of their power, lived in luxury, and substituted joy in material things for the joy of worship and celebration of God. The Hasidic movement continues to thrive today, mainly through what is called Kaballah, the Chabad movement, acronym of Chachma, Bina, Dat, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, a sect founded in 1750. Outwardly, it appears to have little resemblance to the ecstatic joy of expression of faith of the Baal Shem Tov, but it is a continuation of the mystical belief of the divine nature of the universe. Many of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, it seems, parallel the esoteric teachings of Christian mystics and mystery school teachings that many of us seek to understand. In the teachings of Paul Solomon, these mystical understandings are called Christine occultism. Christine refers to God incarnate, the expression of God as appeared in every culture throughout history in many incarnations. Some examples include Buddha, Kaballah, Muhammad, Krishna, Lao Tzu, and the Baal Shem Tov. The teachings of Christine occultism say, you and I are incarnated to be the very Christ, to be the Buddha in this lifetime, to become aligned with the wondrous name of God, with joy and ecstasy, as the Baal Shem Tov. We seek the hidden wisdom that not be proven by empirical means, but by joining together with the very source of our being, often considered by the world as miracle. Our goal is nothing less than transformation, metamorphosis, as by the masters throughout history. We studied the masters who came before us because in getting to know their teachings, we become closer to the essence of the source that they knew. That is, we seek to become the very Christ incarnate, to live in oneness with God, the universe, and with one another. Let it be so. Amen. Thank you.